Welcome back, everyone. I'm Jason Jensen, and you're watching Jason Jensen Trains. In today's episode, we are going to be building this large structure right here. This is the third structure in a series of kits. For those of you who are new to the channel, I have teamed up with Jeff Grove, the owner of Carolinacraftsmankits. Together, we designed this large paper mill. Now, we separated it into 3 structure kits. So you can buy each structure individually, or you can buy all 3 to make this large paper mill. So in my previous videos, I have a video dedicated to this structure, and then another video dedicated to this structure. So today, the final video, we're building the large structure on the end. And the video that follows this one will show me combining all 3 kits to make the large complex. And I'll also build a diorama base that it fits on. Okay, we've got a lot of work to do, so let's head over to the workbench and get started on it. Well, to get started, I braced all of the walls. This is the front and this is the back. And as you can see, I put the bracing all the way to the edge, so it's flush with the edge of the wall. Then on the 2 side walls, I moved my bracing in 1/8 of an inch to allow for these to fit together like so. And then we'll put our corner trim on the outside here. There's a small structure that fits on the side, and for the end walls, I put my bracing all the way to the edge. And then for the side wall, I moved the bracing in. So this one goes like this. And again, we'll put our corner trim down the corner. Next, I'm going to lift some of the boards. So I'm just using a straight razor blade, and you go underneath one of the boards and lift it up. Now, if you're building this at home, refer to the image on the box. You'll notice there's a large sign that goes here. So you're probably not going to want to lift any boards in this area or any area where there are signs that need to be put on. So just avoid those areas and lift them in places where there's no signs. And on some of the pieces, if you'd like, you can first make a cut in one of the boards, and then go right next to it and lift that board. If you are building the entire complex with all 3 structures, the next step is sort of important. There's a small structure that sits on the side right there. That small structure sits right here on this wall. So I simply traced my wall, and you have to come in 1 1/16 of an inch. And then the structure sits right here, and it is 3 5/8 inch long. I'll show you up close. So it's 1 1/16 from the edge, and it's 3 5/8 inch long. And then for the height of it, you can just take your wall section and mark it. Now, if you're not building the entire complex and you're building this by itself, you can move this structure back all the way to the corner. You can place it anywhere on this wall that you want to. But again, if you're building the entire complex, you want to come in 1 1/16 from the edge of the wall and place it right there. Next, we're going to start to paint the walls. And as you can see, I have taped the bottom section of the walls off. And I came up with 1 7/16. So again, I came up 1 7/16 on all the walls and taped it. So the top part of the wall is going to be light buttermilk. You may want to stain your walls first and then paint it. That gives you a newer look. I am choosing to go over the walls first with my light buttermilk and then put my stain over the top of that. I think that gives it an older, more weathered, aged look. So I am using a number 0 brush, and I'm lightly dragging it over the boards, leaving some of the bare wood showing. And then as we get further up the wall, I'll probably go with a bigger, wider brush that'll completely cover it, because the overhang would protect the wall from the weather up towards the top. But down low, I'm making it pretty rough. So it's a combination of lightly dragging your brush over, and then some of it is just sort of dabbing your brush with the paint onto the wall. So all of my walls and windows and trim are painted. I was going to do the lower part burnt sienna. I'd planned on mixing a little raw sienna with it, but I decided to go with sort of a bluish gray. So as you can see, the windows are done, doors are done. And in case you want to mix the color at home, it is Calypso Blue, Light Avocado, a little bit of Deep Midnight Blue, and then French Wine. Any dark red will work. This just actually grays the color down after you mix these three. You can slowly add some red, and it just sort of dulls it and gives it a gray look. Actually, the next step will be to create a wash that I put over all of these pieces. And I'm using raw umber, and I'm adding a lot of water to it. And then I'm just gonna put the same wash over all of this. So here's where we're at so far. I now have to cut all of my acetate. And I believe I have over 40 pieces of acetate to cut and glue in. And then once that's done, we can start to assemble our walls. So all of the windows are done and glued in. And I've even got my corner trim glued on my two end sections. As you can see, the windows, I've painted some of them with some different colors. Next, we're going to take light taupe and we're going to do some dry brushing. So I just put a little bit of paint on the brush and then wipe it off and then lightly go over it. I'll show you up close as soon as I get this one done. It really doesn't take long. You just want to hit the edges. So you can see this one's not done and this one is done. And I'm also doing some of the clapboard also, just to make it look like the paint is chipping off of the edges of all the boards. And we'll go over the windows. Just have to be careful not to get it onto the acetate that we glued in. Okay, all the dry brushing is done. Next, we'll take some pastel chalks. We're just going to use dark brown and black. And we're just going to go along the bottom and just add some dirt. Maybe we can add some rush streaks from the vent side. And let's put some black in the center on this vent. And we can even put some dark above the vent. So just anywhere where you would think there would be dirt and just wear and tear. And then definitely along the bottom. Well, as you can see, I have been very, very busy. And it is surprising how large this structure is. When it's all laying flat and in pieces, even I didn't realize quite how big it was going to be. But it's a very large structure. It took quite a while to put all of the shingles on, but it's a laser cut sheet that will come in the kit. Let me quick grab a sheet so you can see what it looks like. This is a half sheet, so there's actually another half to this, but that's what it looks like. So you have to cut these all off and then just start gluing them on. I used Elmer's glue, and I probably put enough glue on for 2 or 3 rows at a time. But they make a transfer tape, It's made by 3M, and you could put that clear transfer tape on there first and then just put all your rows on there, and that would be probably a lot easier. But I didn't have any transfer tape, so I just used glue. The color on the bottom was a little too dark, so what I did was I took desert turquoise and light avocado. Very little of the green, mostly this, and then I just dry brushed over that lower color. Then after that was dried, I dry brushed light taupe. Next, we're going to build the cupola that goes on top. There's a long cupola that fits in the center on the roof, and then a very small one that fits in the center on top of that. So the first thing we're going to do is use light buttermilk, and we're going to paint the sides. So I'm using a number 0 brush. It's pretty small. And we'll start with the end pieces. I'll show you what this looks like in a second. So you can see I'm not doing it solid. I'm just kind of making it rough. This is a pretty simple build on this cupola. So don't be intimidated thinking that it's something small and tiny and it has detail and it's going to take a while. It really doesn't. I know for myself, sometimes I will put off doing a project because I think that it's going to take a while. I look at it and think that just because it's small and has a lot of detail that it's going to take a while, so I put off doing it. And then after I get it done, I'm like, that actually wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, and didn't take as long as I thought it would. Get past that fear in your head of being afraid to do a project that you think is going to take a while, or that it's too hard. Now I'm going to take a very sharp number 2 pencil, and there are lines on this cupola, and I'm simply going to run that pencil in those cracks. Again, I'll hold this up to the camera so that you can see. Okay, I'll show you the difference. So I did the bottom one, and the top one is not done yet. So just make sure your pencil is very sharp, and take your time. Don't be in a hurry like me. Now we'll paint the sides of the small cupola and the overhang underneath the roof. And we're going to mix the color. So we're using deep midnight blue, desert turquoise, and light avocado. So it's mostly the turquoise blue and a little bit of the light avocado and a little bit of the midnight. Okay, all of our pieces are painted, and now we can start to assemble it. I'm going to assemble mine right onto the roof, and I've already marked where it goes. It's pretty much, it's close to 1 3/4 inches from the edge. Hopefully you can see this. Now some people may want to assemble this first and then put it on. Okay, we'll let that sit and dry, and then we'll put on we'll glue our trim on there. In hindsight, I should have glued this on first, but I get in a hurry, and I don't have instructions to follow. Like, you'll have the advantage of being able to read the instructions that will tell you, hey, glue this on first. Now we're going to set this aside, and we're going to work on the roof for it. And for the roof, we're going to go back to our shingles. So I'm just focusing on one side at a time. So I'm trying to smear the glue evenly on there. Make sure it's all the way to the edge. The first row has to be upside down. Okay, that side is done. Then all we have to do is simply turn it over and cut the ends. Okay, so the roof is done, and we'll cap it with a gray strip after we get our other cupola put on top. Next, we'll get this glued in place. Next, we're going to put together the tiny cupola that sits up on top in the center. And I'm going to use super glue. I did not brace this on the back side. You can if you want to. It would definitely be easier if you did put some thin bracing on the back. But again, it's not necessary. The nice thing about using Loctite super glue is that you have a little bit of time to work with it before it completely sets up. And then just using the grid on my mat helps me to keep it square. Okay, there is our little square. And we'll find out where the center is. Now we have these little decorative pieces that go on the corner. And they go at an angle. So we'll put some super glue on the very top of these and set our roof in place. Just want to make sure that it looks good from all sides. And like I said, with the Loctite, you have time to adjust it before it completely sets up. So I cut a straight piece. It's about 1/4 inch wide, and then I lightly made a cut down the center, and we'll just fold that in half, and then we'll cut it for each side. Now I should have put my shingles on the pieces before I glued them on there. Much easier to take your pieces like this and glue shingles on it while they're flat. I am not going to glue shingles on mine. I'm actually going to paint it. I'm going to use neutral gray and very carefully paint it so I don't want to cover up the white at the bottom, because I want that to look like trim. Now this may take a couple coats. I've mentioned it many times. There's no need to try to do it all at once when you're painting something. If it takes 2 or 3 coats, that's fine. It's going to look better and more even if you take your time and do the coats like that. If you try to do it all at once, it could get lumpy looking and not very even. And acrylics dries so fast, by the time we get to the other side, it'll be dry and we can apply our second coat right away. Okay, so now we're back at the beginning and we're applying our second coat. This one, you want to take your time and apply it a little more evenly. Maybe going in one direction. I think the neutral gray is a pretty good match to the shingle color. Hopefully you can see this. I'm trying to paint it so that you can see it. It's a little awkward for me, but I want to make it so that you can see how I do it. And after it dries, if you want to go over it again, you can, to really smooth it out. I am going to take some light taupe and do a little bit of dry brushing on that very top cupola, just on the edges and on the sides where we put that sort of teal color. Not sure if you'll be able to see that good. It's pretty hard because it's such a large structure. Okay, then we can even take some dark brown, maybe a little black, sort of dirty up that roof a little bit. Okay, I think that looks great. So I've been very busy adding details. The kit comes with these castings. And then for the smokestacks, the kit comes with straws. And then I use blue painter's tape, but you can use masking tape if you'd like. And I simply cut it into a strip of 1/4 inch thick and then just wrap it around. I then spray paint the straw after I've got the tape on it, after it's to this point here. I spray it with a gray primer. I then use raw umber to paint the straw. And the bands around it I paint with burnt sienna. These are also drinking straws. They'll come in the kit. They're just thin. And the plates, the 2 plates there, and there's a plate under the dust collector, those are the cardstock that I made the metal panels. And we'll be doing more of that because we have some awnings to put on this And we're going to cover the awnings in that rusted sheet metal. Here are my loading docks once we get to that point. So that one will fit right there. We then have a deck on the front that goes like that. And then on the side, we have a loading dock that goes right there. So I wanted to show you quick how I put on those smokestacks. So I just take a piece of the sheet metal that we painted, cut it the shape I want, and then glue it on the roof. I then take a small drill and drill a hole, and then cut my straw to length and glue it in place. Once that completely dries, then I'll take the raw umber and paint it. And it'll probably, to cover up the white, it probably takes about 3 coats. Next, we're going to move on to adding the foundation. Now, I made a little mistake and put my bracing all the way to the edge. And I'll explain it to you. What I had to do was I had to add bracing that extends down. So now I can take my paper rock, and glue it to that. But an easier way to do it is, and I showed this in my last video, say this is your wall and this is the bottom. You would leave maybe 1/4 of an inch at the bottom. Your bracing wouldn't run all the way to the bottom of the wall. You would leave it up 1/4 of an inch. Then you can take your mat board, which comes in the kit, glue your rock work to it, and it gives you a nice overhang. And it's just very easy and it's very strong. It's better to do it this way, but again, I forgot and put my bracing all the way to the bottom and didn't leave room for my foundation. So I just extended it down, and now I'll glue on all of my strips all the way around. Okay, so the foundation is all done. And I am just so pleased with it. I think that it just looks great. And I'll do a little bit of, after it completely dries, I'll brush on some pastel chalks to kind of dirty it up a little bit. But I think it looks great, especially with the color. I wanted to really quick show you, because it's pretty exciting. It looks really neat. Just adding some dirt and powder along the bottom. Yeah, I love the way that looks. You can do dark brown, black, and then you can also glue some ivy, some little green on it. I just love that textured paper. Just think it looks great. So I'm building my loading dock, and I first cut a square to the size that I wanted. And when I put it in, the corner back here isn't perfectly square. So I took a file and just slowly kept filing it, and I even carved a little bit of the corner just until I got it to a perfect fit. So keep that in mind when you're building your loading docks, that chances are it's not going to be perfect. You might build it and it might turn out to be a perfect square corner, a 90-degree angle. Mine was not, so I just had to I'd file a little bit, test it, file a little bit more until I got it exactly how I wanted it. So now I'll flip it upside down and put my legs on and build it upside down. So I set my first post, I glue it in place and make sure that it's straight from all angles. I then cut a strip of this to put on there. That way I have a guide to put my other legs on there. So again, just check it from all angles to make sure it's straight. And then we'll put one right in the center. Okay, now that side is complete. And then we'll put X's to brace it. So here's the finished loading dock. So I've made a little loading dock that goes on this side. And now I'm just painting it. And again, I'm not doing it solid. It's almost kind of dry brushing. You want it to look really rough with the paint. And then we'll stain it after this is done. Now that the deck is all painted, I'm going to put a stain over it. And I'm using raw umber and a lot of water. You always want to test it first. This is our little ramp that goes up to it. I'll show you up close what this looks like. So I let that dry. Dries pretty quick. Next we're going to take some pastel chalks and add some dirt. Especially right in front of these doors. Okay, and we can't forget the bottom. Next, we're going to build an overhang for the front that goes right here. And so there's just a rectangle piece of cardboard. Then we're going to use a 1/16 inch strip wood that is already painted the trim color. Okay, so we've just glued two pieces to the ends that are the exact width of the cardboard. Okay, now we're gluing on the front of it. So we're just building a frame around that cardboard. But we're not going to put a piece on in the back. Okay, next we're going to take two little triangle pieces. And these get glued on the ends. I'll hold this up to the camera as soon as I get this glued in place. So this is what you have so far. And so this is the bottom of our overhang, which we'll probably want to paint that. Now we've got to put a roof on the top of this. Okay, I just mixed up some trim color, and again, it's desert turquoise, deep midnight blue, and I grabbed Hauser medium green. I'm lightly going over this trim so that everything matches. And we probably should just paint the bottom of this. Okay, it's not a perfect match, it's pretty close. It's not quite as gray, but it is close. Okay, now we're going to paint the edge of this and underneath it. So we only have to do the edge, a little bit of the overhang. Okay, we'll let that dry quick, and we'll put some shingles on the top of it. Okay, so you want to flip it over. The side that we painted will be the overhang. So we want to glue the shingles onto the side. So I have a flat piece that doesn't have the diamond pattern, and we're going to start and glue that on first. That'll be the bottom row. Put a little bit of glue on the top of that. Okay, now we'll simply flip it over, and there's our roof. So to glue this on, actually I think I will glue this on first. Okay, I'm going to glue on my roof card, and notice that I put little notches up in the corner on each side. That's to allow for the thickness of the trim. And then I'll also run a bead right on the edge at the top. Don't worry if you get too much, you can take your paintbrush and clean it right up. And when you do this, when you use a brush to clean up glue, make sure that you put it in water right away and sort of swish it around so that glue doesn't stay in there. Okay, so there is our little overhang. Now we have to put supports, poles that go down. We're going to put 4 across here. So I had some leftover sheet metal from our first structure, and again, it's just made out of cardstock. So I decided to use it on this and put it on the fronts. I think it really ties it in with the rusted vents and rusted pipes. Sort of ties it all together. Next, we're going to do an awning, an overhang, just starting here at this door and going to this door, just right here. And we're going to be using the sheet metal to cover it. So here's our roof. It'll go just like this. And I painted the edges of it and the underside of it the bluish color. Now I've laid out my sheet metal and it's the same length, so now we'll just put glue on this and glue them all on. So I just put some of my black tar, and that is just Elmer's glue mixed with black paint, and just use a thin brush and brush it on. Now we'll take some pastels, just add some dirt over it. Kind of dulls down that black. Next, I'm taking some very thin strip wood that is painted the trim color, and we're going to cap the top of the roof. Now you could also cap the top just like we did on this, just with some of the gray paper. I just had some of this trim laying on my desk, so I thought, why not use it? Okay, so it's pretty much done except for the signs, and I'll do that next. I'm going to get on my computer and create the signs, and then I'll come back and we'll glue those on. So I created this sign on my computer and then printed it out. I then glued it to a piece of cardboard. And all I did was I just put some glue on the cardboard and then smeared it evenly with my finger. Then stuck the piece of paper, stuck the sign onto it, and let it dry. Now I'm going to cut this out, but first what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a brand new blade. You always want to be very careful, especially when you're using a brand new blade. It is extremely sharp, but it makes it so much easier using a brand new blade. So we're going to use burnt umber and a sponge. Then we'll take some pastel chalk and just in one direction streak it down. Okay, our sign is done. Now if you wanted to, you could put some strip wood behind it and mount it right on the overhang. I'm going to glue it directly on the front of the building. Make sure it's nice and flat. That glue tends to make the cardboard curve a little bit, so just make sure it's good and flat. And you want to smear it around, make sure that it goes all the way to the edges and it's not too thick. Just want to hold it there for a little bit till it sets up. If you let go, it's going to want to curl up. It's going to want to curve a little bit. So just keep pressing it down. There it is. I almost forgot. The kit comes with 2 other signs. It'll come with multiple signs, but I'm going to add 2 more to it. And I just cut them out and added a little bit of rust and painted the edges of the paper with burnt sienna. And now we'll glue these on. There's one. it is done. Now, if you want to, you can poke little holes in the corners to make it look like it's a metal sign and they tacked it to the side of the building. But you should use a really sharp number 2 pencil. Don't know if you'll be able to see, but okay, now it is really all completed. It took quite a bit of work, but I am thrilled with how it turned out. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Just to let you know, this project took me probably about a week and a half to build. So it's quite a project, and I have the model right here in front of me, and I'll show it to you just so you can see the scale of how large this thing really is. Such an incredible value for the size of this model. So again, if you would like to buy this kit, please visit Carolinacraftsmankits.com. And again, you can buy the 3 structures separately or all 3 of them together to build the large complex. All the information is on Carolinacraftsmankits.com. So please visit their website and stay tuned. The next video will show me combining all 3 kits and also building a base that they go on. So the next video is going to be very exciting. I am really looking forward to it. So until next time, happy modeling, everyone.